So welcome again. It's Ken McElroy with Real Estate Strategies. I'm here with Mike Ayala. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Ken.
And Four Peaks Capital, and they invest in mobile home communities. I was excited to have him on. We've had his partner on too, Andrew Lanoy, and I just love this class of real estate, guys. I just love it. I used to manage mobile home parks, and there's. I think it's a incredible way to create a nice community for people, and also provide the investors for a very, very good return. They're usually on the edge of town, not always. So sometimes they're in the path of growth, and so sometimes we've actually bought them because they're already zoned, and we'll put apartments on them, or something else. You know what I mean? So sometimes they're just a covered land play for a long-term, investment group. So, Mike, as you know, I speak a lot about affordability, and I think it's the biggest issue. I know it's the biggest issue we're facing. You saw in the news right now is all you got to type in is rent control. It's all over the place. I just met with a governor on this. It's a massive issue at the National Apartment Association, the National Multi-Housing Council. I just had 2 meetings with the Arizona Multi-Housing Council on this exact issue. How do we attract money to Arizona and provide housing that's affordable for the teacher and the first responders and, people that are, out there really trying to make a difference, and they're just not making very much. So I love this category. Let's talk a little bit about some of these mobile home parks, because I know your story a little bit. How you kind of fell into the first one as you were set some of your goals. But let's talk about what are some of the bigger challenges that you're seeing in investing in mobile home parks?
So we kind of touched on this already, but the cap rates, there's more money coming after mobile home parks than there ever has been. But we're still in our niche, if you will, is the turnaround strategy. So we're looking for parks that are 75 to 150 spaces. We're buying parks, and obviously you have to be careful sprinkling in, parks that are 35% occupied, because it takes a while to get those filled up. And so the challenge, there's an opportunity there for parks that are not, they've got a lot of spaces that are sitting empty, but that's also where the challenge is, because you can only get so many new houses brought in. So that's probably one of our biggest issues is the timeline. I think we bought 45, 50 new houses last year. But you got to, we're in line with everybody else. They're coming off the factory. They got to get delivered. You've got to get the space infrastructure done, which is another challenge in itself. You've got a park that Jimmy park owner hasn't put any money into for 15 years. And so that the infrastructure is a challenge.
Are you finding when you clean these things up that you're like getting people from other places, other parks?
Yeah, well, yes. The short answer to that is yes. And the more creative you can get on the financing and help them get into homes. And that's where you can really, find the residents that are wanting to move out of other locations.
That's what I love about this model too. I wish I had that with apartments, believe it or not. I really do. We lose most people to home ownership. I wish I had both. In other words, I wish I could help some of my tenants, residents generate equity, because it is just that little bit, that they're putting away, and they also have a little pride of ownership in something that's theirs.
Yep.
Don't you agree?
I agree with that. And one of the things I've actually seen, this will pull on your heartstrings a little bit. I've seen people that owned their homes that ended up buying a single family home later, and they still own that home, and it's now a rental property.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's their first rental.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know the price points are what your normal price point?
So to buy a brand new home, we're getting them set for $42,000. So we're selling it for $45,000. I mean, we're not making a lot of margin on the home. It's not really about the margin on the home. It's about getting a resident in there and a long-term tenant.
Yes. Yeah. The reoccurring revenue, right? How are you finding that the debt and equity, how is that? Like, because it's not like your normal, like with me, like I package up a 200 unit apartment building and I bring it to, Goldman Sachs, and they understand it. Right. So I know this is kind of new, right? Like they're not used to very good numbers. They're not used to good accounting. And so you guys are bringing this professional approach to it. How's that sitting across from these financial guys?
It's still extremely challenging because they don't want to own the homes. And so, as I said before, in a real world, 100 spaces, we don't own any homes in that park. But the reality is we're always going to own some of those homes. We're going to have to repossess some of them. People are just not in a position where they can buy. And so most banks and most institutions do not want to finance a mobile home park where you own 10% or more of the homes.
Oh.
So that creates its challenge in itself.
So how do you get around that?
It gets a little complicated, but they want a separate LLC owning the homes from the land.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you have two LLCs when you're buying something.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And where I still sometimes it doesn't make any sense, but it appeases them. And so they want the rents assigned on the home portion over to the land LLC. And so you're still kind of crossing everything and tying everything back together. But I think for their purposes, they want them separate.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, what's cool is that you figured that out.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's just what problem are they actually trying to solve or get around? And then if we can just put our hats on and help them solve that, then they help us.
Right. And it's just everything else is the same, right? They lend you the money and they want a return.
Yeah.
On their money.
Yeah.
Right. What are some of the returns you're seeking and seeing on some of these investments? Like if one of our investors was interested in that, what would they be seeing?
So and again, mobile home parks are coming down. The returns we were seeing 5 years ago are not what we're seeing today. We're targeting about an 18% IRR.
Wow.
We pay an 8 pref and it's an 80-20 split. So,
that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But the other side of this, and just again, a lot of times, we're buying a distressed property, and so it takes a little bit more time, infrastructure, capital, and even back to the lending conversation real quick, I just want to throw this out there. It's pretty hard to get a good level of financing on a park that needs to get turned around that's 50% occupied. It's pretty much non-existent. So
it's the same with apartments. Yeah, I bought some stuff back in the day from the bank, after one of the crashes, and my the bank's looking for collateral. And there isn't any, right? The expenses are higher. The expenses plus the property the property taxes are higher than, right? So yeah, there's that kind of window. It's hard.
It is hard. And you think about it, the two main areas where we need to spend money is on infrastructure, which banks don't want to own new plumbing systems. I mean, that doesn't really help them a lot. Right. And then the other thing is we typically need new homes. So the banks don't want to loan on the new homes. Yeah. So,
so you guys are getting nailed all over.
Yeah, there's challenges.
Well, you figured it out though.
We're
you guys are on fire right now. So what are the costs associated with owning a park? Like if somebody was, let's say somebody's investing in one right now or looking at one or considering, to do it. What are some of the costs they should be looking at?
The same like apartments or anything else. I mean, the roads, the streets, if you want to refinance that, you got to have good streets. A lot of these old mobile home parks, they're gravel. Oh. And if you want any kind of financing, they're going to want roads put in there.
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
It's a big one. Safety. We talk about safety and just the quality of the park itself. If we don't have good lighting, that's an issue.
Yeah.
A lot of these old parks don't have street lights. So you got to factor that in. We've got a lot of empty lots with old infrastructure. So, you're putting a new pedestal in. By the time you get the lot prepped and everything else, you're looking $3,500 to $5,500 per lot before you even bring a home in there. So
are you doing community centers too and that kind of stuff? Do they have those?
So we're really in the affordable. So our target, if we go into a market where the apartments are $1,200, we want our apartment rents to be 2 to 3 times our lot rent.
Okay.
So we're definitely in the affordable housing space. And so we don't go overboard on the amenities. There's no pools. There's no community centers. This is just a place for families to live and affordable housing.
So when you're getting let's say you're sitting in your office and, you've got an investor that wants to invest and you get a park that comes to you via email or, a package of some sort, or you're meeting with a broker. What's your kind of quick and dirty? What do you look at?
So we're looking obviously at the current rent roll. Where's this thing currently at? How long is it really going to take us to get that filled up? Because most of the time when we see a park that's 80% occupied, it's not an issue of, 20 houses are just sitting empty. It's probably those houses need remodeled. We need to bring in new homes. What's the length of time to get that done? Because it could take us 3 years to get a park turned around. So that's really the biggest. I heard you say this before, like when you're looking at somebody's deal and they're like, the rent roll right now is showing $10,000. And then all of a sudden in month 1, they're projecting 15. How are they getting there?
Yeah.
So for us, I can't just drop 20 mobile home parks next week. And even if I did, I can't find 20 residents to buy those homes in the next week. And so we've got to just really factor that time for scale.
Okay. Yeah. So time is a big deal with you guys. Yeah, first of all, I'm a big fan of value add. You know what I mean? But it's complicated and there's a lot to it. And it's also, people can get really annihilated, doing it. So I'm a big fan of that. So what are the red flags you see when deciding to invest in the park? What are the big ones that you go, okay, I'm out. Like when you pass, what is it usually because of?
So the obvious things that you brought up already, I mean, we're looking for economies of scale. So, we're in 14 different states now. And so this is kind of the pre-pass for us. Like how far is our closest other park for management? I mean, are we going to be flying in just for this one particular park? And so that's kind of a quick and dirty for us. But these states like Illinois, we have a park in Illinois and we're starting to see some challenges. It's taken us 6 months to get residents out right now. And so not only the state itself, but the county, how a lot of counties and cities don't want mobile home communities there. So how friendly are they going to be with us if we're buying a park that we're going to turn around and we need to bring in 30, 40 new residents and homes? Are they going to work with us?
Oh, wow.
Lot sizes.
They don't even want you.
Not a lot of times.
Isn't that interesting? Because of those other questions we said, they think they're bad areas.
So the question to the planning and zoning and the mayor and everybody else is, so you don't want affordable housing for your people? Is that what you're saying? Like,
right. It's true.
Yeah. Open up a can of worms, but that's the road we've got to go down. The other big thing on the lot sizes, because a lot of the old mobile home parks, the lots were really small, and now there's zoning and setback requirements within the park.
Oh.
So do we have 15 feet in the front? Do we have 15 feet in the back? Do you have 30 feet between the homes?
So when you're looking at them, you're actually having to measure it all out to make sure that you can put in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the challenge is like they were never actually, the lines were never actually set. So it's kind of like this imaginary line within the park. The outside boundaries are done, but inside the park, not so much. So it creates its challenges.
Oh, for sure.
We're using drone technologies to solve that now.
Are you really? So how does that work?
So we just got a DJI drone that flies over 3D mapping. We send it out to a mapping company and they lay out the lots. And
good for you guys. Yeah. So as far as the management, we haven't really touched on that too much. Obviously it's one thing to raise capital and buy something. But then it's a whole other thing to manage the process. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's obviously a lesson, and anybody that says that they got it figured out from day one is lying to you. I mean, it took you 20 years to become an overnight success, right?
Sure.
So we've had our challenges, but I didn't start investing in manufactured housing with other people's money. I started with my own, and so I took the hard knocks that way. Building out the team is extremely important, especially when you're scaling across the country. So we have our management in-house. We don't outsource it, but you got to imagine our managers are in 14 different states and our regional managers are here. And so it's taken us probably the last year and a half, 2 years, the entire focus has been building out the right team. And I think we have the right team in place. And
good for you guys. Yeah. It starts to be a lot more fun when you can start to rely on somebody, Plus having boots on the ground is nice, right? To be able to go look at parks and you don't have to jump on a plane all the time. I remember when that kind of flipped, but in the early days I was flying all over the place, and then all of a sudden you got somebody there. I could call up my manager in Dallas and go, hey, I need you to run over here and check this out and send me pictures or go do a rent survey. And you know what I mean? And all of a sudden it just takes all that time. It's nice when that starts to roll up and it starts to work for you. Right. And having all those folks, well, Mike, thank you. This has been great. I know that my listeners are going to love this. It's just, I think you guys, this is the very beginning of a real estate class that has not yet had a lot of attention. And I think this is, you guys are at the very beginning of it. So congratulations.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate your time.
You bet.
Thank you.